Are we broadcasting or are we not? This will be interesting. So can you see it in there? Oh, we're live. We're actually live. Hi, people, we're live.
Oops. Oops. Okay. Everyone, ignore what we're doing. Okay. Actually, we accidentally pressed go live too early. So what I'm going to do is just explain what I was planning on doing before we went live. And hi, Vandy. So this is emblematic of what we're about to do. So everyone, hi and welcome. It's been a while since I've streamed or done anything. I will probably do a small explanation at the end of the stream. But first of all, I would love to introduce every single person here on this stream to the ever lovely polymathic or Jen.
Hi.
And almost a doctor, aka Matt.
Hello.
Hello.
And I've tweeted it so you can copy it, Matt.
Okay. Okay, so what is happening is today I just saw a thing on The Guardian. It's an article about a person who knows nothing about ADHD with an opinion on ADHD. And that opinion is wrong, and we will explain why. But first of all, I would like to introduce one of the reasons why I read this article and thought it was wrong, because I want to talk a bit about my experience with ADHD. One of them, my ADHD's journey, I was 26 years old when I was diagnosed. Back when I was growing up as a kid, ADHD for girls didn't really exist. And we will talk a little bit about medical misogyny in it because that comes up fairly early on in the article. So I'm just but for me, when I got diagnosed, we always knew something was wrong with me. But when I finally got diagnosed, there's always something wrong with someone. But when we finally got diagnosed, it was like, oh my God, that makes so much sense. And so it was like, it just made sense. Everything about my whole life made sense. Even though it's been a very long time since I last when I got diagnosed, I'm still looking back in my childhood and going, holy shit, that makes perfect sense. So when it comes to ADHD, I'm I get pretty defensive about misrepresentation of ADHD. And we'll talk a little bit throughout what we're reading, our experiences, and why this guy is an absolute twit. Jen, I might skip you because you've got a slightly more interesting ADHD journey. I'm sorry, but Matt, you're boring. No, I'm joking. Matt, would you like to explain how you got diagnosed, when you got diagnosed, and how it sort of impacted your life? Because for me, when I got my ADHD diagnosis, I ended up going to university. I got really good grades. I wouldn't have been able to do half of the things I've been able to do if it wasn't for my ADHD diagnosis. So Matt, would you like to be able to explain what happened, how you got diagnosed, that kind of thing, and how it impacted your life?
Yeah, so as you mentioned, my journey's a little more boring than the two of you because I was diagnosed quite young. So when I first went to school in kindergarten, you would get those tasks every Monday of write a little story, a recount of what you did on the weekend. And I can remember back, there was one of those tasks they gave us 40 minutes, and all I did was write on the weekend those 3 words, and I spent the rest of the time staring out the window. I just couldn't do it. the teacher would have to actually sit down with me and go word by word through it. And obviously that's not practical when they have a whole class. So it didn't take very long. And luckily, my parents both have medical backgrounds, so they're at least on board with that sort of stuff. I was very lucky in that there was no bias towards, I guess, to ignoring it or anything. And so we went, and I just had the regular diagnosis. Obviously, I was quite young, so I don't remember all the details. But I had very, very, very bad attention problems. And so I was diagnosed back in kindergarten. And so that stayed with me throughout all of school and uni and, various medications later. But one of the things that also is a bit harder with it that I think I may have struggled once I got to about adulthood, it got better, but particularly at school, I found some of the social aspects a lot harder. I was not good at fitting in with regular groups of the more typical social aspects. But as I said, once I got to an adult, I could find more like-minded people, and that kind of went away. And these days, I'm now doing my PhD in physics, so I've got a big science background. A lot of my friends are very scientific, and some are actually doing medicine, some are doing immunology, most of them are scientists or engineers. So at least getting on with them and being able to tell them I'm fine with. But yeah, throughout school and everything, I didn't tell really anyone because it was a kind of secret. Because there was this thing that the people at school who had it, because I was, at least for high school, I was in an all-boys school, where the kids who can't sit still, they're always annoying the teacher. And it was just this kind of like bouncing off the walls. Like they've had, snorted 10 lines of cocaine sort of thing. And that was the mentality with it. And I'm like, that's not me. I was just kind of the little kid that sat in the corner, but I have trouble focusing. That was mine. I'm happy to go into more details about what it's like now, but that's the rough outline of where I got to. And for me, it's not necessarily trying to overcome them, but manage or at least live with the way it affects my working habits. And hopefully I can get through my actual PhD. So I think I'm finding a way around it.
And Jen, so you've got probably the more interesting story. You got the most interesting. You're also muted.
That's my fault because I did that because the dogs were barking. Yeah, well, I mean, because I'm that little bit older than both you, I grew up in a time where people weren't diagnosed at all with ADHD. It wasn't a thing. So being diagnosed as a kid would have been hard for me anyway. But I wouldn't have been diagnosed anyway because of being trans, because trans people, well, I don't know if it happens for other trans people, but I mean, I'm also more complicated than that because I'm not just trans, I'm intersex, so I've got both sets of genetics, so it's kind of weird.
Yeah, you absorbed your twin in
Yeah,
utero.
drew my twin, yeah. Or probably
Jen is
pre
two
there
people.
actually being a twin, but yeah, you know what I mean.
You are your own twin.
I am my own twin, yeah. So I would have shown the typical traits as a kid that the girls would have had, which is, Mara's already said, because of medical misogyny, girls weren't diagnosed at the same rate as boys because boys' ADHD tended to be more visible. So I wouldn't have been diagnosed anyway, even though as a child I would have been perceived as the right gender to have been the one to have got it. It wouldn't have made any sense, so I would never have been diagnosed anyway. But as far as coming to the thing that I had ADHD, that's entirely Mara's fault. We were having a discussion earlier this year, and I can't remember what it was about. And Mara just said to me, "You have got so many ADHD traits. You should go and get yourself tested." And being ADHD, that just bored its way into my brain, and it was like, okay, I'm gonna have to do something about this. So I went and saw my GP. We did some preliminary testing as far as the GP can do and things like that. And I tick all the boxes for it as far as being a woman with ADHD. So yeah, I most likely am, but I haven't had an official diagnosis because as most people who know me online know that I moved like earlier last year, so I don't live anywhere near any professionals who deal with this, and the prospects of going backwards and forwards to the big city to get a formal diagnosis, which at the moment, the biggest hassle I have with my ADHD at the moment, if I was working full time, it would be a bigger issue because it was when if I look back on it now, I can tell where the problems were. But because I'm not working full time at the moment, the issues are manageable anyway. Apart from the one that is the same one that Mara has, and that I don't sleep because insomnia loves me.
Yeah, so something like 75% of people with ADHD have like sleeping disorders. It's
Yeah,
like,
and it's mostly because our brains never shut up.
yeah.
It's
And
just-
then finally, when we do finally go to sleep, it's impossible to wake us up because we're so exhausted. So yeah, mornings
And that
are
adds-
just the worst.
that adds to that inertia that I think it was in our pre-discussion, the Matt was talking about that inertia that's hard to overcome to get anything doing. So
Yeah.
when you eventually do wake up, you don't want to do anything because it's so hard to get started on anything. And then even
Yeah.
if you want to get started, you're worried about starting because I don't know if it's the same for Mara or Matt, but I like to finish things I start. And if it's going to be that much hard work for me to get started, I don't want to start it because it's like I'm never going to be out. I'm going to be at this for the rest of the day, or whatever else. You know, I can't walk away from it.
Yeah.
I have to finish that, and which leads to procrastination because I don't want to start something because I know I won't stop. And that's
So
hard balance.
one of the things about ADHD is it's completely individualized. So one person with symptoms of ADHD might be completely different. So we were having this conversation earlier about the difference between ADHD and ADD. ADD is still acceptable as far as I'm aware in the psychological and ADHD community, but there's more of a push away from it because ADHD is the bouncing off the walls kind of attitude where you might see, you know, the naughty boys bouncing off the wall, but yeah, like what Matt's doing. But the thing is,
well, that's what I was saying about when I was at school. That was the view. If you had it, that's what you were like.
Yeah. But now, because we're starting to become a lot more aware of the gender, like how females or women tend to, but not always, but tend to present differently than males. Again, not always. You can have male ADHD in females and female ADHD in males. They're now realizing that ADHD can also be internal as well. So even though women or girls generally don't tend to be bouncing off the walls, the ADHD presentation is overthinking, brain can't shut up, that sort of thing. So you're finding that we're gonna talk a little bit about medical misogyny as we go on, but Jen, I'm gonna share your screen.
Oh yeah, I better be ready to scroll that. Hey.
Yep. So, opinion. I might not be a doctor. Goddamn right you're not, but I'm almost certain you have ADHD. Everybody give this guy the finger. Oh my God. I just when I read it, I just got angrier and angrier and angrier.
It's cock-wombling at its finest, isn't it?
Oh my God.
My first impression was I think they've mislabeled it. This should be the Onion, not the Guardian.
Yeah,
I can't take it seriously. It reads like
I
a
rarely
joke.
take the Guardian seriously, though. I mean, this is the kind of rubbish that I kind of expect from the Guardian, if I'm going to be honest.
I was trying to be diplomatic, but
yeah. So
this is the kind of article that a certain Jimmy would quote.
Yeah. So welcome to the new stage of your life where everyone seems to have the same neurological condition. Anyway, let's go down.
Let's get the picture.
Okay. All right, who wants to read first? Let's make this a class exercise.
I'll go first then.
Okay, you can do it.
Pick me, pick me, pick me. See, hold your
I'll
hand up.
pick you. I'll
The
pick
other one.
you.
Oh, okay. Let's see. Oh no, now I'm on the spotlight. Let's see how it goes. Well, it's official. You have ADHD now. I hate to be the one to break it to you. Imagine if you'd prefer to hear it from a doctor or a psychologist, or even just someone who isn't banned from from entering hospitals because they get drinking all the saline packets like their juice boxes. I'll remind you, I'm a taxpayer.
That's the weirdest sentence ever.
Mm-hmm. Even with my little stuff up in the middle, it was because I'm trying to read it. I'm like, it's difficult to read. Okay, let's do second paragraph too. But with the way things were going, the ever-increasing explosion in adult ADHD diagnoses, the reassessment of who's been chronically overlooked, read women, the course correcting of the course correcting, you must have known this was coming. By now, most of your friends have all been diagnosed.
Yeah, I was just going to say, all right, let's stop here. Okay, I can tell you this right now. I have never heard of a person with ADHD being banned from drinking from entering hospitals because we keep drinking all of the saline packets. Where the fuck does that come from? And this is one of those
I don't get what it's got to do with anything.
I don't even see what it relates to anything at all. Unless he's trying
because
to
he drinks
people with ADHD are insane or something.
Is it because the author drinks them and he's saying I should be able to drink them? I'm a taxpayer. I pay for the hospitals. Like I don't get it. Please,
again,
somebody in the comments help.
Why does he drink saline packets?
It's just salt water, really. That's all it's going to taste like.
Yeah.
Hey, I'm just getting some. Can somebody just let me know if the stream's dropping out?
Oh, I haven't got it up on the screen at the moment because I've got the other thing.
I can see it. I've got it up. It's still running.
Yeah. But we've lost Mero.
Oh no. I think it might keep going.
That's okay. We've got two of us in control. So.
And people in the chat have seen that and they're answering. Okay, that's good. While we wait for Mero to rejoin and we keep going, be like, there's Mero. Never mind.
There we go. Sorry about that. Did the stream just drop out, everyone?
No, stream seems to have kept running.
Oh.
You just disappear from it and then you come back.
Okay,
I think it'll keep going until you hit end.
All right.
So at least the system here is not as crazy as the person who wrote this article.
And at least with two of us in charge of this StreamYard's Mirror, if you do drop out, I can end your stream.
Awesome. Sounds good.
There's that.
Yeah, so I don't know what you guys were saying, but this is one example of how often people with ADHD find a lot of discrimination because we are portrayed as potentially violent, impulsive, going through potentially dangerous situations with a laissez-faire kind of opinion. And so the thing is, like, first of all, saline is like 5 cents a liter. So
yes,
what the fuck? I'll remind you, I'm a taxpayer. Oh, congratulations. So the fuck am I?
I'm not. I don't earn enough because PhDs don't pay less than minimum wage. When I get a proper job, then I'll be.
Yeah. So it's sort of ADHD is not that. Yes, we are impulsive. Yes, we can get into a lot of dangerous situations and that sort of stuff. But the reason why we are more likely to is because it's unmedicated or untreated. People who are ADHD are more likely to become people who are addicted to drugs and alcohol. People who have ADHD are more likely to be arrested, but the vast majority of the time, that's because they have it's undiagnosed. I hope, yeah. So, but also there are so many people with ADHD and are really well put together, intelligent people, like that have contributed towards society. All three of us right now have
I just want to
had.
add something to that, is that when you were mentioning that kind of that goes in with that side bit of, oh, they're just impulsive and you do things. I couldn't be further from being impulsive. I overthink everything I do. It's not, oh, I've done it without thinking. It's no, I'm thinking too much to make an easy decision. I am terrible at deciding what, an easy example to pull out that doesn't have any strong consequences is deciding what to have for lunch. If I've got a strip of shops like restaurants or cafes in front of me, I cannot decide because my brain overthinks it all.
Yeah.
It's not planning everything to the like if I do this, what's the result of that? And it's it just gets incredibly frustrating.
Exactly.
I mean, we are probably more frustrated by ourselves than other people are by us. And we know how frustrating we are.
Yeah. Yeah. And also the reassessment of who's been chronically overlooked read women. So I did touch on it earlier that women who've been diagnosed with ADHD tend to be later in life.
Although that is changing now because they've got better diagnostics.
Yeah, it's the same argument that people have with the autism and vaccine thing. It's like, no, there aren't more people who have autism. There are more people with autism being diagnosed because the diagnostic criteria has changed.
Oh, and I want to add something to the vaccines one, is the reason why people are like, oh, I got my toddler a vaccine and then they show autism, is that autism doesn't show up. It is very, very difficult, although we are getting better and it will probably be in the next few years to the point where we can do it early enough. But it is that you can't actually detect it early. So there's always going to be a lag, and it will take a few years generally before the diagnosis is made. So it means it's normally after they've already had a few vaccines that it'll show up. And I just want to get out there because it's a clear correlation, but not causation. It's
the whole
this happened,
it's the
then
left-handed,
this
right-handed thing again. Which is an example we often use when we're discussing why there's more trans people now than there used to be. It isn't that there's more, it's just that medical science has improved to the point where we're better able to support these people, and as a result, the public is less condemning. And it's the same for ADHD, and it's the same for left-handed and right-handedness.
Yeah.
There used to be a lot more right-handed people in the past, but that's because we stopped them being left-handed. And as soon as you did that, it wasn't that suddenly being left-handed was a social contagion. We just stopped being assholes. And we get the same thing with medical things of people with medical conditions, especially when you talk about mental or neurological conditions, which is now like, it's not that it's more acceptable to have a neurological condition. It's just that we understand that these are things that happen to people and we shouldn't be condemning people for it. So people are more likely to get a diagnosis. And because of that, the chances of being able to diagnose people, because we've had bigger samples and the science has got better, has shown that there's more people with a condition than what we thought it originally had. And that's normal. That's what happens. That's how things change over time. We will always look like there's more. I mean, I've seen people describe ADHD as a social contagion in the same way as gender criticals try to describe being trans as a social contagion.
It's disgusting.
And that's just bullshit. It's disgusting.
I'm not diseased. I am not diseased. So one of the things is that with women who have ADHD or female presenting, I'm sorry, and I know female and male is not particularly the nicest way of describing it, but female presenting ADHD tends to be sitting in the corner, being really quiet, just kind of like daydreaming off with the fairies kind of thing. And male presenting ADHD are the little boys that are climbing the walls. And as we all know, the squeaky wheel gets the oil. So, you know, kids that are like literally climbing the walls and screaming and being disruptive, they tend to get the ADHD diagnosis much earlier than the ones that are sitting in the staring off into space.
Because in
Matt,
the past, those kids are just described as they're a bit shy, so they're introverted, and that
yeah.
may be true, but sometimes it's not just that; it's something more.
Yeah, because Matt, you did mention, like, you know, you had the teacher, you could only write one sentence. I had exactly the same
I
thing.
actually had much more of what you're describing as the more feminine version. That I wasn't the kid that was going to be climbing the walls, but I remember being early primary school. I was still a very disruptive kid, but it wasn't quite the climbing up the walls. It was just, yeah, occasionally I would do something that was noticeable, but a lot of it was I can't focus. I get distracted, so I will. But yeah, it's a weird thing because it's more of a spectrum. It's not your one or the other. I think I sit a bit more in the middle than I guess might
And
otherwise
then you get accused
expect.
of not achieving what you should be able to achieve.
Yeah. When I was a kid, I was probably about 6 or 7, we were told, okay, here is a piece of paper, right, copy from point A, like copy what we've given you, and from, like, just write it down. So read it, write it, read it, write it. 2.5 hours in, I would have a sentence written, and I would get yelled at. I was called lazy. I was blah, 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 blah. And that's one of the things that a lot of ADHD people get called, is lazy and stupid and blah, blah, blah. But anyway, because I remember I was deeply embarrassed, and I lost plenty of recesses and lunches because I just couldn't write. And, you know, nowadays, if I went through primary school now, I'm pretty sure they would have gone, hey, I think she's got some ADHD. But at the time, there was nothing we could do. There's nothing. Yeah. So, so that's just one of the things that this course correcting is, women tend to get diagnosed much later in life with ADHD because of the diagnostic criteria not taking into the fact that females tend to have ADHD symptoms that are different to men, in the same way that women having heart attack, the symptoms of female heart attack syndrome symptoms are totally different to men. So this is here's some of the things. Like, this guy obviously knows sweet FA about ADHD, because they don't talk about the fact that, you know, women are underdiagnosed, and then there's evidence to suggest that boys are overdiagnosed with ADHD. So, you know, we're still trying to figure it out, and there is some course correction, but
I mean,
anyway.
it also comes back to that whole thing of that thing, like, if you were a girl who had it, you were just shy and quiet, or if you're a boy who had it, well, not always. We shouldn't really categorize it that way, because there's probably just as many boys who have the quiet form of ADHD as the in your face thing. It's just that they went underdiagnosed as well. It's just I've lost track. I derailed my thought. Sorry. Did that to myself.
Jen, do you want to continue on?
Where did we get up to?
By now.
By now, most of your friends have all been diagnosed. It was just a matter of time. That you got the green light to. Oh, okay. Shouldn't there be before in the middle of that sentence? Sorry. I'm just saving you the trouble of finding an expensive specialist who suspiciously had to do even more school than a regular doctor, despite allegedly being smart. Doesn't it?
Oh my god!
How on earth could you get that so damn wrong? Like, yeah, you need to learn more about a specific area so you can actually treat people for it.
Yep.
Yeah. Yeah,
That's why they're called specialists and why they have to have more training.
yeah.
Yeah,
And
if I'd
not
been
just
smarter, I wouldn't need a PhD.
yeah, it's so wrong. And also they've done studies and they've found that people with who are aneurotypical tend to hang out together, mainly because we know each other. We speak each other's language. They did studies of people who have autism, and they realized that people with autism can communicate just as effectively with other people who have autism as people who don't have autism can communicate with people who don't have autism. So what's happening is autistic people and non-autistic people or allistic people, when they talk to each other, it's just like this giant missed high five. So, and it's like, why would you want to go and talk to someone who just doesn't understand you? They don't speak your language. And that's
I
why
definitely have a few friends where that's the case.
Yeah.
Where we can sit down and I know because we both think along the same lines. We both have the attention deficit. But here's one while you're mentioning that that came to mind is I know a little while ago, and I think it still goes on every now and then, some people have pushed to have autism and ADHD classified as the same thing. I don't seem to agree with that, and medical people I've spoken to say no, it's more of yes, they show a lot of similar symptoms and you can have both. It'd be akin to saying that, okay, both of these things cause you to throw up, so it's the same physical problem. And I don't know, I just wanted to get your thoughts on that, because I think some of the symptoms, although you probably know more than I do, for attention deficit have a bit of overlap with autism. Is that?
Yeah. They both, I think, target the prefrontal cortex as like they're both developmental disorders. And both, I think,
By the way, you've got a money donation, Mary.
Oh, thank you. Thank you, Digital Demonic Davros, by the way.
Hello,
my Aussie brethren.
Yep.
Been a while since the dumpster is lit. Let's enjoy civil discourse. By that mean, don't let me get on a serious stream. Fair enough. And Vandalia for $5 in middle school, way back in the ancient days of the 90s. I was on a generic Ritalin for my ADD, but they accidentally gave me diet pills for 3 months. Oh, that's good.
I wouldn't complain.
So from my understanding of ADHD and autism, they do affect similar areas of the brain, which is why there's a lot of ADHD and autism symptom overlap, and which is why I think a large number of people have both. The way someone described it to me is that it is a different branch of the same tree. So they're not the same disorder.
And I agree with Titan, Uranus. OCD sort of falls in that same thing. Whilst not necessarily a something that you have to be either autistic or have ADHD for, it tends to be something that a lot of people with ADHD are as well, is OCD.
Yeah. So, because the parts of the brain that are affected in ADHD is you've got brain memory issues. You have time awareness issues, like, when you say to somebody, I'll meet you in 5 minutes, and they've got ADHD, 10 minutes later you'll meet them, because I don't know about you guys, but 5 minutes is a lie. 5 minutes, just you blink and it's gone, and that's called time blindness. There's you've got a lot of your higher executive functions are compromised, and it's all to do with just certain areas of the brain that just didn't develop the same. And that's kind of So I think ADHD and autism, they do have overlaps because they do affect similar parts of the brain, but they aren't the same disorder. So that's why a lot of people do end up. And I watched a video the other day from a psychologist, and she goes something like 80% of people with autism are also diagnosed with ADHD, but it's a bit lower with people with ADHD that's been diagnosed with autism. And she's like, and yeah, it was just really interesting video. And she goes, five signs that you might have both. And I watched it and I was like, I have autism.
Do you remember what those
hit
signs
all of
are?
those fives. I'll see if I can find the
Because now
video.
I'm curious.
It was really interesting. I did actually tweet about it last night, so I'll see if I can profile.
While you're bringing those up, I do want to go back to something I've mentioned at the beginning and kind of alluded to a bit earlier, is the social side, particularly at school, where the average maturity of the people in, say, I guess your friends, your cohort, was lower. I found it really, really difficult. Once I got to uni, and particularly because even though I've got 3 majors, so I had a lot of subject variation. Most of my time was still spent in science with fairly like-minded people who by then are at least a bit more mature, even if we're not more sensible. That's how I described getting into adulthood, as you mature, but you don't get more sensible. And I found it was much easier to get on socially with people, particularly other scientists, but than on average with school. But yeah, it was just the sort of the way I connected. It always felt a bit more awkward, or a lot of the things I'd need to say get on with, because the business side, the people I'd meet there. And again, this is fairly anecdotal, but I always found that a lot of the way I'd interact with them, unless they were doubled and we had like an engineering or science side in common, felt much more like learned behavior than a natural. Whereas with the others, it was just I could get on. Again, this is a general trend. I'm not.
No, I'd agree with you. Even
case,
from my experience when I was young, was like I generally found that most of my peers I found to be less mature than what I was, and I found that really difficult. So my friend groups tended to be very small because they needed to be people who I felt I could talk to like an adult, even as a tween. It was like, no, I don't want to talk about dribble.
Do you want to?
Yeah, I'm on Twitter now, so.
Yeah. Do you want to keep going? I might read the next bit.
Yep.
Welcome to the new stage of your life where everyone seems to have the same neurological condition. Everyone give the guy the finger. Or is at least somewhere on the same spectrum, grinding our skateboards endlessly along different points of the same vast handrail, like one of those freakishly high-scoring rounds of Tony Hawk's Pro Skater, which the least supervised kid in your primary school friendship circle could pull it off without blinking. A significant time in ADHD culture, now that I think of it.
I don't even know what they're trying to get to. What came to my mind first was reading the actually second half of that was is he saying that you do the computer game without blinking? Because attention deficit often comes with the ability to hyperfixate, where you can zone into things like that, and the rest of the world you're sort of aware with it, but it's still a blur. And you're going to finish it, and you're going to finish everything.
Yeah. So one of the unknown things or misconceptions is that ADHD people just can't concentrate. No, that's totally wrong. The way I describe it is that ADHD is off or on. You either want to know literally everything you can about something, or you don't. So for me, maths, don't even get me started. I don't understand it. I don't care. Try to get me to do even basic maths. I want to feel like I want to tear my eyeballs out.
Right, you can always defer to Matt and I.
Yeah. However, if somebody was like, "Oh, here's this thing on bacteria," I'm like, I will read about this one particular species of bacteria for 4 days straight, and that's
How did you cope with the math you had to do when you were doing your degree?
I did badly, but I sort of like I did it because I had to, but interestingly, one of the common things with ADHD is dyscalculia and dyslexia.
Yeah, see, I'm
People who
dyslexic.
yeah. So yeah, what I don't understand what this person's trying to say.
Apparently,
Granny
without
asked,
blinking, giant buttholes just pointed out can mean with ease.
with ease.
But
I wouldn't
even
say
still,
anything
I'm
was
like,
more easy when you're ADHD. You can become more fixated on something, so you will concentrate on it for a longer period of time, and in that
I
way, you
just
might get
don't
really
get
good
what
at
this
something
person
like a video
is
game,
after.
but you don't find it easier. It's not easier.
No, you just, it looks easy to you because you find it extremely interesting. And that's
Yeah.
one of the things that really shits me off is everyone's like, "Oh, you're a smart person." It's just like, no, I just learn a lot about everything because that's my ADHD. I know so much shit.
And then
There's
you
so much
remember the
shit in here.
shit.
Oh,
And the
I got
stuff that
so
you're
many
less
random ones.
interested in, you forget. So
I could map you out every single inch or centimeters, because I prefer SI units, of a German Type 7C U-boat from World War II, because I found it interesting, and I could tell you all the equipment. I could even tell you probably how to use some of the equipment.
Yeah.
that's ADHD, but
Yeah. It's just, but the thing is that pisses me off about this person is sort of a significant
yeah,
a
like River
significant
Vigil says, we either have lots of motivation or none.
pretty much, as I said, off or on, there's no in between.
Yeah,
But
maybe three,
the
yeah.
thing is, he goes, a significant time in ADHD culture, now that I think of it, there's no culture. This isn't a subculture.
It's like saying the cold and flu culture. Okay, maybe a petri dish in that case,
To be
but it's
fair,
a
this
virus, so
person probably
probably
thinks
not.
there's a COVID culture. So
yeah, it's
it
bullshit.
seems
Like,
to be a thing these days. Every time there's a group of people who share something, who might discuss things together because they have a shared condition or whatever else it is, all of a sudden it's a culture.
yeah, no,
It seems to be
ADHD.
a right-wing talking point that it's a culture, whereas
Yeah.
it's not.
I have a beard. Does that put me in a beard culture?
Yes, absolutely.
Yeah,
And you are not allowed
yeah.
to be here because you are the only one with the culture, with the beard, in the beard culture. And
One of my favorite science jokes is bacteria, the only culture some people have.
yeah, it's true.
I like that.
One of the things,
that
like,
joke really needs to go viral.
I love that. Budum tish. I do want to go back a little bit about friends having ADHD and being able to communicate with someone. I have a workmate who, I'm pretty damned good at picking people with ADHD now, because after a while I was just like, yeah, you've got it. And like, I can pick people with
Example right here.
example right there. I can pick people with ADHD within probably half an hour of hanging around them. Sometimes more, sometimes less. And sometimes I miss people, but more often than not, if I say, I think you have ADHD, they usually have ADHD. Anyway, I have a workmate who I was like, you've got ADHD. And I had to bring it up with them because I work with people with disabilities, and them being kind of off with the fairies was actually quite dangerous for myself and the client that we were working with. So I said to them, look, I think you've got ADHD, go get this checked out. And so they were good enough to go, okay, I will actually go and get it checked out. It took them months to go and get checked, which we will come to in the future, shortly. It literally took them months. And the day that they started Ritalin was the day they were like, oh my God, is this what it's like to have a normal brain? It absolutely changed their lives. And every time I talk to them, they're like, this is the best thing that's ever been done. You have changed my life. And I think a lot of people who have ADHD and were diagnosed as adults will tell you right now, holy fuck, I wish someone had told me this earlier. So I just wanted to bring this up.
It's the one
yeah.
reason why I probably should go for a formal diagnosis so I can
Yeah.
experience that, because it actually kind of nice to know what it's like to have a brain that just slows down.
Matt, do you want to read the next bit?
Okay, and this one,
I need to scroll
yeah, I'm
it
just
down,
scrolling to it on my own. Okay, yeah, the end of this annoyed me, but I, of course, have it, having been diagnosed mid-pandemic. Like so many others, I spent far too much time with myself not to come out thinking something must be going on up there. I knew I needed an answer, even if I had no idea what the question actually was. Plus, this way, I get drugs. And that was that last bit that pissed me off, because it kind of stigmatizes taking medication. Yes, medication is technically drugs, but a drug is just any non-natural chemical that has a noticeable effect on your physiology.
Isn't it a dreadful ad that they put in after his line about drugs, though?
But the thing is,
I mean, with the old Guardians, you could at least rip a bit off the corner to roll them up to take certain drugs, but
yeah,
one of the few useful things I think you could do if this was ever in print.
Yeah,
but this. Oh, sorry, Mary.
Oh no, you go.
I was just going to say, this stigmatization, this demonization of drugs, or it's this, it's just for fun. Like the drugs are just there because they make you feel better, sort of thing. It's such a destructive attitude to have, and luckily, at least, family and friends around me don't tend to have that attitude. Though I did have a few family members who actually argued when I was a child with my parents to tell them that I shouldn't be given medication for it, because they thought that they're buying in, I don't know what the hell. I don't even think they had a clear thought on it, but it was this evil thing about no, the drugs are not natural. They're evil. And I mean, I'm not going to say they're not natural, because most drugs these days are derived from natural products. So there you go, take that. But that annoys me, because there are so many other conditions where, not just the attention deficit, where it becomes stigmatized to take certain drugs.
Yeah.
As
like
though
antidepressant.
That's the other brilliant one. Unfortunately, I haven't ever needed them, or at least been diagnosed with the need for them, and I'm grateful for that. But I cannot imagine trying to stigmatize someone or have a go at someone who needed them. My approach when it comes to those is, hey, if that's going to help you, take them. You'd be
exactly.
And this guy clearly has it. He should at least be, so you would think he'd have some empathy, but the way it reads is like a joke. It's like, at least I get drugs. I'm like, that doesn't make it fun.
No.
Ritalin, for a start, generally speaking, doesn't affect people with attention deficit the way it affects other people, or people who don't have that or a similar condition. Because Ritalin, for a start, and yes, it's not the only one, but there's quite a few attention deficit medications that are chemically similar, or at least their mechanism. Attention deficit is a amphetamine derivative. It's chemically similar, though though modified from the amphetamines, and that is the same branch as like meth and speed, etc. But it's obviously a much nicer version. That's going to give a lot of people quite a buzz. It's a stimulant, but it doesn't always work on people with attention deficit in that way. For some people, it'll ramp them up and make them go a little more hyper, and for other people, it'll slow them down. And
one of the things that some people have figured out why that they've got ADHD is that they took speed, and they're like, this has done nothing, but I can really clearly think now. And so they've gone, oh, I might get checked out for ADHD, because, if they're like, oh, speed doesn't do anything for me, I don't know why for people who have ADHD, stimulants calm them down. I don't know the mechanism of why. I don't even think we know. I don't think science even knows why. It just does.
Well,
but
for me,
people,
it doesn't necessarily slow me down, even
for
though I
me,
have it. So it just shows just how difficult and nuanced this whole thing is. Yes, it's a generalization, but I already know that I'm a bit of an exception to that because, yeah, it doesn't necessarily calm me down.
Yeah,
But that
for
depends on
me,
the But then again, caffeine, I bounce off the walls.
yeah.
So
Yeah, a lot of people who have undiagnosed ADHD drink 6 or 7 cups of coffee a day because the stimulant will calm them down. Like, and the side effects of ADHD drugs can be pretty severe. I mean, I was taking Concerta, 50 milligrams of not Concerta, Vyvanse, which is methylphenidate, I think. And it was I was getting 3 hours of sleep a night. I would eat maybe 1.5 meals a day. I wasn't drinking anything. It just buzzed me out. But Concerta, on the other hand, which is also methylphenidate, but is slow release, helped me out a lot and calmed me down. So it all depends on the person. It all depends on each and every one. But yeah, it's sort of like, I can tell you this now, taking Vyvanse for me and taking it 5 days a week was absolute fucking hell because I couldn't sleep. I was getting 3 hours of sleep a night, and I was incredibly anxious all the time, and it was horrible. It's not fun. And this guy's like, "Oh, I get to go on drugs because it's fun." No. Yeah. And so May is saying Vyvanse did nothing for her. And yep. And she said that speed does nothing for me. It doesn't calm me down. It just prevents my panic attacks. Yeah. So it all changes from person to person. Like, it's really, really complicated. Yeah. And so just going, I get drugs, is just like, it's an asshole thing to say.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Very.
I'm happy to take the next bit too because
All right, go for it.
Oh man.
Many of my friends are at this or that stage of the consultation process. Meanwhile, a growing cohort of ultra online zillennial Twitter warriors are claiming ADHD removes all object permanence for some reason. They can be ignored for the most part. They'll cease existing as soon as they leave the room anyway. What?
To
Someone
be fair,
help.
I kind of like the joke. I just don't like I don't. Yeah. That joke of object permanence and then not cease to exist when they leave the room. Fair enough. It's a newspaper article. I get the humor. But did this person ever stop to think about this is confirmation bias from their point of view? Because as we've already discussed, people who have ADHD tend to get drawn towards other people who have ADHD because we understand each other. So many of his friends probably are ADHD because that's the kind of people he finds it easiest to communicate with.
Yeah.
So it is pure confirmation bias.
Yeah. And we do get attracted to people, like, when I was saying earlier, like, I can pick a person with ADHD almost immediately. One of the reasons why I can pick them is because I like them. That's like, I like you. And it's sort of a different feeling of like towards somebody who doesn't have ADHD, or is because, I don't know, there's like a sense of familiarity. There's a sense of, I can't really explain it, but it's a certain
I get where
feeling
your brain
of,
is going.
yeah, I
Yes.
understand you. Yeah, that's the thing that I've found when it comes to people with ADHD, is I can pick people literally within 2 or 3 minutes of where I'll start thinking that person has ADHD, because I literally go, I like you, I think you are awesome, because I know that vibe. I know I get the vibe from them, and yeah, so my best friend of 15 odd years, she's got ADHD. If we didn't have ADHD together, I think we probably wouldn't be friends. And I've lost contact with a lot of people over a long period of time because even though I like them, I didn't get that vibe from them. So yeah, that's
I can't drink energy drinks. I know they're talking about them in the chat, but last thing I want is, well, I drink enough coffee to drown a ship. Drown a ship? That's an interesting metaphor. But
Jen, do you want to read the next bit?
Yeah, I can read the next bit. I might scroll it up first, though. Hang on. I haven't got the right thing up on this side. There we go. We've done that one, haven't we? Yeah.
Yep.
So we're there. This is not to diminish the significance of anyone's diagnosis. Yeah, I know. It sounds so full of shit. Many people have had their lives improved dramatically, almost overnight, and I'm one of them. So this person has self-awareness of that, but not the awareness that these diagnoses helps everyone.
Mm-hmm.
That's to say nothing the relief of gently reframing many of my more knuckle-headed moments, forgetting to go to uni graduation in 2008, arriving for an international flight with tickets for the following year. I won't say the year. Fridge bacteria reaching HR Geiger levels of alien civilization. Ongoing.
It's just like,
but my diagnosis is valid, but yours isn't. This is.
But yeah, also, this is sort of like the next paragraph is the first. If you read the first sentence of these two, that is not to diminish the significance of anyone's diagnosis, but it's also hard to deny the stunning ease at which these diagnoses are made, or at least they say have become commonplace. But to paraphrase, it's like, I don't wish to diminish it, but I'm going to diminish it anyway.
Yeah.
I just...
Yeah. Yeah. So do you want to read that bit, Jen?
Oh, the MBA. Oh, yeah, but it, what Matt just read and go on.
Yeah.
But it's hard to deny the stunning ease at which ADHD diagnosis has become commonplace. Like when a new character is quietly introduced at the beginning of a show's second season, we have to sort of just accept that they've been there the whole time. Yeah, what?
I don't remember any show like that.
That's a reasonable example. I've never seen that really happen in a show at all. New characters are introduced quietly, yes, but you don't. Generally speaking, they don't assume they were there. The only time I've ever seen that is when they've recast someone, and then you have to assume that this is still the same character, even though it's played by a different actor.
Yeah,
and that's one of the side effects of having to recast. Unless, of course, it's what.
Yeah. Doctor Who, every single time he gets recast, it's a big thing.
Yeah, you still have to suspend disbelief, though. So, yeah.
Yeah. Yeah.
Do you want me to keep going?
Yeah, do the next one. No, the next one, and I'll have a quick chat about.
Have they? Has this really always been with us? In early human societies, were there those who constantly had a dozen unfinished hunter-gatherer projects on the go? Is this why it took humanity so long to develop the Game Boy? Could Julius Caesar have played Pokemon had things been different?
Okay.
What the hell are they going on?
So, there is actually a suggestion that ADHD has a selection pressure for it. And the main reason being is the person who has ADHD gets bored. We get bored. And in getting bored, we go, let's go over there. So they go over there. And they come back to the tribe and go, look, there's a watering hole over there. So half the tribe goes over to the watering hole and the other half stays. And then a few generations later, another person goes, I'm bored, I'm going to go over there. And then they go over there and then go, oh, there's a watering hole. So people with ADHD, they are the ones that do the invention, because people with ADHD, like, how does this work? This is one of the big things with ADHD, is that we hyperfocus. And so every single time, we want to know how something works. So we are the craftsmen, we are the engineers, we are the inventors, we are the ones that go exploring, we are the artistic people. This is like ADHD, as far as we know, is there has been a selection pressure to allow ADHD to proliferate throughout the human race. And there's also, they're very like ADHD could actually go back further in time, and there might be ADHD analogs in other species of animals. So yeah. It really has been with us. And a really good example of somebody with ADHD would be Leonardo da Vinci. Leonardo da Vinci was an inventor and an artist, and he had his hyperfocus, like his sculpting, his art was his hyperfocusing. But there was a lot of people who were like, this dude just never finishes shit. And so, like, I think there was a freeze because there's a specific way to paint, and of like it was like a porcelain freeze where and the porcelain had to be wet while you painted it, but he just was too slow, so he invented the porcelain to take longer to dry so he could continue doing this painting. Because if he didn't do that, he couldn't finish the freeze. So Leonardo da Vinci is probably, you can't obviously in retrospect diagnose him, but there were so many things that he did, like his inventions, his artwork. The very fact is that Leonardo da Vinci discovered that cholesterol, cholesterol plaques caused people to have heart attacks, because he was doing autopsies on people to try and figure out how the structure of the muscles to make his artwork more realistic. So he was a scientist, an inventor, and blah blah blah. He was, I would put money on him. If we were able to go back in time and talk to him, I would put money on him being ADHD.
His journals are really interesting.
Yeah. So yes, there is actually.
Me down track here, Barry, that I'm interested in now.
Yeah, so it's and Maya makes a really good point. When you know what you're looking for, it's easy to see things have always been there. I talk to people about their parents who just thought they were different because there was a diagnosis wasn't there. Like, I went to a family reunion the other day, like last week, and I just walked in and I was like, every single person here has ADHD. Like, literally every single person here has ADHD. Because it's a genetic thing. It's so strongly genetic. Like, there has to be a reason why it's in the human population. So yeah, it has always been with us. Go fuck yourself, dude.
Yeah. Anyone who's interested about Leonardo da Vinci and his codexes or his notebooks, tested. Adam Savage just did a thing on them, and it's really interesting about how he people think that the notebooks were the books, the codexes were the books he carried around and he scribbled his notes in, and that's not true. He carried around other bits of parchment, scribbled down things, and his collective thoughts, once he was able to figure out what he was actually really thinking about, is what he wrote in his codex. So his codexes, despite being all reverse writing and all the other weird stuff that he did, is actually a more collected series of thoughts than what his individual papers were. So any of the small individual papers that exist still of Leonardo da Vinci's are a lot more harder to understand and chaotic as hell.
Yeah.
Which adds credence to what Mara was talking about with him most likely.
Oh no, I get that. The first time I'm asked to write down what's going through my head, particularly when it comes to, say, writing a thesis, people like, you don't know what you're talking about. It's like, because it's just so much going on that to actually slowly sift through and get it. But once I've had the time, it gets to the point where it's like, I can't actually explain things in very complex terms. I but I do have an advantage of being able to explain things in very easy, very simple terms, which people seem to enjoy, because that's one thing that science papers don't always do. But for me, once I have the time to sit down, I do tend to keep things really simple, very straightforward. Relatively speaking, I'm still dealing with topics that inherently are not all that simple.
Hey, at least you're not doing quantum physics.
Quantum did come into my honors thesis a little bit because I was dealing with quasi-particles, and optics does have a bit of quantum, though yes, overall it's not. But I would be surprised if a single person in the chat knew what I meant when I said quartz enhanced photoacoustic spectroscopy.
I do.
That's what.
Well, that's because you've explained to it.
Yes, but it's not. But it's just because it's such a niche field. It's just not one that most people would be aware of, and I wouldn't expect people to be aware of it because you don't need that information. But that's what happens.
Yeah.
Also, I can't remember what my point was. There we go. There's another example of attention deficit.
That's the second time. No, 3 times. We've all done it this stream. We've derailed our train of thoughts.
Although I think my original train of thought was about how hard it is to get thoughts down concisely the first time. So maybe I just backed up my own
you gave us an example, Matt.
I'll go the next bit. The threshold for diagnosis seems to be an open question too. Have you ever missed a bus? Have you ever been eating a strand of spaghetti only to find your lover was unwittingly eating the other end in a romantic tableau? Were your ancestors seafaring nomads, or was it more of a static agrarian situation? My diagnosis amounted to 2 extremely quick chats with a doctor and a psych. Contrast this with one friend whose psychologist put them through 4 rigorous stages of assessment before they would sign off on it, and another who had to forward a questionnaire to her family and friends so they could contribute their thoughts. You have to go through less to get a job at ASIO, and they give some of these guys a sniper rifles.
Don't think you give ASIO people sniper rifles.
It's very pick me again.
Thinking of special forces, I think.
I had it easy. These people had it hard. It's obviously easy for everyone. What?
Yeah.
How did they get to that at all? From
yeah. I would say I probably got diagnosed a little bit too quickly by my psychologist. But like I think like he saw me twice, got me mum to send through school reports, and had interviews with people, and also had interviews with me, and I got diagnosed probably within 2 or 3 times of talking, while my workmate went through 4 months or so, and her psychologist going and then eventually
it's a spectrum of different things, so of course some people are going to be harder to diagnose than others.
Do your school reports look like mine, Mary? Very capable, but never applies themselves.
Yeah, pretty much. Yeah. And that, like, the thing is, like, once you know what you're looking for, and the person who diagnosed me is actually one of the leaders in the world when it comes to ADHD. Like, he's up there. He explained, like, I wouldn't be surprised if he was like, as soon as he spoke to me, he was like, you have ADHD. Like, some people are really, really, really easy to pick. As I said to you, like I can pick people really, really easily. And some people I might, like, somebody I didn't know until they said, oh, I've got ADHD. So, and I'm not saying that I'm an expert at ADHD diagnoses. Like, if I'm talking to you and I say, I'm not. I'm genuinely not. It's just a gut feeling that I have, but it's incredibly accurate, at least in the positive. Maybe not so much in the negative sense, but at least in the positive sense of, I think you have ADHD. They go and get themselves tested, and I have never had a person come back and say I'm not ADHD. So don't quote me on this. As I said, I'm not a psychologist, and neither is this dude. Just going to point that out. This guy is not a psychologist. But look, it all depends on who your psychologist is and rah. And I just have issues with the fact that this person's like, oh, it was easy for me therefore everybody's getting it diagnosed easily. You know, bullshit. Absolutely
That's not how it
bullshit.
works for anything.
Yeah.
I think
it comes down
it
to how
reads
easy
more
you
of
are to diagnose.
Yeah.
it,
was
it
that, Matt?
read to me more of a other people didn't get the same method of diagnosis as me, therefore they have no idea what they're doing from a professional point of view.
Mm.
That was the impression I got. It was, oh, it was easy for me, it's hard for others, so clearly they don't actually know what they're doing and it's arbitrary.
Yeah, I got that vibe. Like, you know, it's sort of like having a chat to somebody who's like, oh, occasionally I get a bit sad and, you know, blah, blah, blah. Okay. And then you dig further and you might have to take 4 or 5 conversations to find out, yeah, this person is severely chronically depressed, versus somebody who's like, I burst into tears whenever I see somebody wearing a hat. Like there's, you know, there's a spectrum. And sometimes people are harder to diagnose. Like, and the more subtle the things are, the harder it is to diagnose. Like, you know, there are still questions of whether I'm autistic or not.
This
I
person comes
do.
across as very ableist.
Yeah. Oh shit. Yeah. This guy is very ableist. Incredibly ableist.
And the next paragraph especially.
Do you want to read it?
I can do. Despite this, it seems to become the defining condition of our age, certainly of the younger generations, and probably the older ones too at this rate. Gen X already lived through the 80s depression boom, and baby boomers had whatever you get from having your sports carnival sponsored by an asbestos company. Any generations before that had less believable conditions like battle fatigue and plague. This is something I would expect to come out of the mouth of somebody like Seth Rogen or something.
Yeah.
It is so ableist, that whole thing of battle fatigue and plague. So he's now dissing on post-traumatic stress syndrome and any other conditions that we had earlier that we couldn't name.
Yeah.
Plague? Are you kidding me? Plague, from like a medical and historical point of view, refers to the bubonic plague, the Black Death. It was very specific, and there were multiple outbreaks of it across history. The two most famous being 1353 and the Plague of Justinian, if I remember the first year correctly.
And I did a video on Yersinia pestis as well, because there was an outbreak during 2020, which I got shitty at the media about. But yeah, like there's Yersinia pestis outbreaks happening today. Like we've never gotten past it.
Yeah.
So,
but it's a hard one because it lives outside of just people. So,
I mean, he's dripping with so much sarcasm and ableist attitudes.
Yeah.
And I'm all right, mate, because mine's real, but yours isn't.
Exactly.
So it's a pick me in amongst all that ableism and sarcasm.
But I'm also getting the vibe from this dude that he doesn't even think he's got it. Like, he's just kind of going,
I've got it, so I don't really have it, but I've got it, but I get cool drugs out of it, so that's cool. So that's a good thing.
Yeah, and it's sort of, and I think he's at that point in a diagnosis, which some people can get, which is no, it's the denial stage. I don't have it. They just say I have it, but I don't have it. It's a denial stage.
And I completely disagree with these comments, and he's starting comments in the next.
Yeah. Matt,
can I take this one?
Ooh, I'll let you do this one.
Some of the... Meanwhile, try not to get tied in a knot wondering how much of the modern environment, which is drastically more difficult to navigate with the symptoms of ADHD, may be directly influencing those symptoms. Personally, I think it's unrelated that the 21st century's dominant modes of labor and education and entertainment, are even at a glance disastrous to the human body and mind. Sitting all day is turning our central nervous systems into string cheese. Blue light is nutribulleting our brains. None of my business. That does not read as though those question marks are meant to be there. That sounds like he is spouting nonsense,
Yeah. It's more
pseudoscience.
sensationalism and sarcasm at the whole thing.
Now, I can definitely comment on the blue lights thing. The only thing I know of with that is that blue lighting can affect sleep patterns for some people, in that the human body is not used to seeing a lot of blue light late at night. As far as I can tell, it's not doing much more than that. And actually, there are solutions to it. Like if I hold that up, you can see the blue reflection. These are blue light filters. So, but only mildly. You don't. I don't know why it's even worth bringing up.
Yeah.
I guess it's mostly the state of because we use LED displays so much nowadays with our phones and everything, that we're all being more exposed to blue lights for longer periods of time, and it does mess with our body clocks. But it's also something that we're evolving out of because of experiencing this all the time. We're actually training our brains to behave differently, and some of the younger children born now don't have the same problem with blue lights. So
Epigenetics too.
It's epigenetics, yeah.
Yeah, and also don't forget, humans have only had the Industrial Revolution for the past 200 years, like 200-300 years. So before then, we didn't have as much problem with ADHD, as I mentioned earlier, is because we had artisans, like artistic people, or people who were inventors, or all of those people. We don't have that as much. Like the arts and STEM, for example, have been absolutely shat all over because of the current situation of the world. Is like STEM, not so much, but but the arts and humanities, which is where a lot of people with ADHD do go into. As I mentioned earlier, we are very artistic people in general. Not all the time. That's like obviously a blanket statement, but you'll find that people with ADHD tend to be really creative. Like there's no such thing as a blacksmith anymore. We don't have blacksmiths. We don't have sculptors. We don't have artists that get paid an actual wage to go and do stuff.
You're relying on things like Patreon and YouTube and and the internet. So, which is why you find so many ADHD people on the internet, because it's one of the viable forms of possible income you can have.
Yeah. So the 21st century is like, I think the thing with ADHD coming out more commonly in the 21st century is because we are encouraged to sit at our desks for 8 hours a day. We don't have time to go and do artistic and creative things, because if we were to do artistic and creative things, we can't we don't get any money out of it. It's not a viable, unless you're incredibly good, it's not actually a viable career choice. So it's like, and it's the same with autism as well. Like people with autism who get exhausted by interacting with humans and wanting to stay at home, they are the ones that would go out and plow a field. But now people with autism are being forced to talk to people at all times, and then they start having their meltdowns and things like that.
But do you agree with his first comment that it's drastically more difficult to navigate with symptoms of ADHD in the modern world? I'm not sure that that's entirely true. I think some of our lifestyle things possibly make it more difficult, but the fact that there are more tools now available to people and more medications and more things like that actually improves things, but only for those who get access to those medicines. Those tools and those medicines and the therapies and things like that, which is a problem like if you're an American with ADHD, cost is probably something that's going to restrict your ability to function.
Yeah,
the cost of those medicines. And even in Australia, we have a similar issue. I mean, if you are struggling to get a diagnosis, and yet your GP and maybe the first couple of consults you've had said, yeah, you probably are ADHD, but you can't get that final diagnosis because for whatever reason, the only way you're going to get Ritalin in Australia is to pay it outright off the top, full price. And even then, you
Yeah.
probably won't get it because of the requirement at the moment under COVID and everything for those drugs to go to the people who are diagnosed. So there is also this element of you could be pretty much diagnosed, but because you haven't been diagnosed by the people who've got the right ticks beside them, you are not eligible. And
Yeah.
that does make it harder in that sense. But I mean, we're a lot better off in Australia than like if you were in the UK or the US, because in the UK you'll never get an appointment, in the US you'll never be able to afford it.
Yeah. One of the things that shits me to tears is that if you got diagnosed after the age of 18 in Australia, you don't get discounted ADHD medications. But if you got diagnosed before the age of 18, you get discounted ADHD medications.
Oh, I didn't realize that bit.
No, it's ridiculous.
You pay full price.
I was able to get around it because my school was like, she's got something wrong with her concentration. If she concentrated more, she'd do better. And because the school report said that, brought up the fact that I had difficulty concentrating, my doctor was able to sort of like do some medical magic and was able to get me retroactively diagnosed with ADHD. But the thing is, ADHD is a congenital disorder. You were born with ADHD. It doesn't matter when you get diagnosed, you've always had it. So I just think it's ridiculous. And this is going back to the medical misogyny we were talking about earlier, is that when somebody has ADHD, a woman who has ADHD, she's less likely to be diagnosed because of the at a younger age, because of the diagnostic criteria being aimed more towards male presenting ADHD. Again, as I said, not every woman has female ADHD and not every male has male ADHD. You can swap them around. So it's the generalized. Again, remember everything I'm saying. Again, I'm not a psychologist, but I've done a little bit of that research, a lot of that research, but that's one of the things that you'll find is that women are being diagnosed later on in life is because we don't have those same symptoms. And that's something that really shits me to tears.
Which is pure misogyny as far as availability for medication. Help. It's harder to get referred as a woman to get diagnosis as well.
Yeah.
Because there's a big attitude amongst a lot of doctors that you're coping, so why should we spend money on you in the system?
It's like, I'm not coping. Have you seen my house?
Yeah, have you seen the fact that I don't sleep? Oh, I can give you some sleeping tablets instead. Yeah, that's not the point.
Yeah.
You know, you're not shutting out my brain by just giving me sleeping tablets. I'm going to wake up in the morning with the exact same thoughts I went to sleep with. And it's not help. That's not going to help.
Who wants to? I think this is the last paragraph. That.
Is it? Hang on, give me a sec.
Jen.
I've got it up.
Yeah.
Yep.
Okay. All right. I'll do the last one. Is that all right?
Yep.
Yeah. So with all that out of the way, congratulations on your diagnosis. And I cannot help but hear that in a huge amount of sarcasm. Try to take things slow, which can be difficult with the you get it. As you work your way through what will be the medical trait of the 2020s, at least until the permafrost melts and releases some of that ultra bacteria they keep talking about, and everyone develops a prehensile tongue or the ability to see inside their own face. Whatever it is, I just hope they treat it with the same stuff they're giving me now. This guy deserves to go and get kicked in
He really does.
The taint. Like, come on. Seriously. Seriously.
Is it appropriate to say that he should defecate a cactus?
He should go and defecate on a cactus. Absolutely.
No, not on one.
Actually, yes. It's also appropriate. He should do that too. So also a little bit of climate change denialism as well in there, right at the end. Just right at the end, just kind of somehow. Mayor, why is he like this? I don't know.
I get the impression this guy voted for Scotty from the block last election.
Probably. So what are your thoughts?
Well, my brain will not slow down enough to actually figure out what he just said, but I don't think he knew either. So, yeah, that was a roller coaster of dumb.
Yes.
I don't know what his point was. I don't know why he wrote it.
I just think he decided to have a bitch.
Yeah, I think his attitude, like what he wanted to do and what he wanted to say was basically he got a diagnosis and he just wanted to shit all over everyone because he got a diagnosis and he's in the denial stage. That's my personal opinion. I could be wrong, and I probably most definitely will be. But he hits all of the bullshit. Anti-ADHD rhetoric.
Despite the fact he doesn't believe his own diagnosis, he's very happy about getting his drugs.
Yeah, exactly.
Which makes me think he should be taken off them.
It's just he tried to make something funny and lighthearted, and someone was like, "How is on Twitter? How is this comedy?" And I said, "It's not comedy. It's bullying." That attitude that he has is outright bullying. It's ableist. It's
why
sexist.
I said he's a pick me. He's somebody he's had a diagnosis, but he wants to be on the side of all the stop medicalizing people brigade. He wants to be in that brigade, but he's had a diagnosis, so he's going, pick me. I'm one of the good ones. And we see this all the time.
Yeah, I'm one of the good ones.
And everything. Yeah, I'm one of the good ones.
Yeah.
And to prove one of the good ones, I'm going to throw everybody else under a fucking bus.
Yeah, he's the Candace Owens or the what's the name, Blair Whites of ADHD.
Yeah.
Yes, he tried to throw everyone under the bus, but he missed the bus.
Blair
by
White
10
is actually the Blair White of ADHD. So I've seen that video.
Yeah, like literally everything he said was regurgitated anti-ADHD bigotry. Hooray, I get drugs. Hooray. Oh, it's not really a real disorder. I'm slightly surprised he didn't talk about how the fact that, we should be beaten. Yeah, that was a great thing. Yeah, it's a good one. It's like you should have the shit beaten out of you.
We didn't have it back in my day when I was a kid. If the kids were misbehaving, we took the rod to them.
Yeah.
That is that attitude. I mean, he didn't actually espouse that, but I can see where that's probably what his next article will be.
He's probably not a lot older than we are, Mero, because he said he graduated or missed his graduation in 2008.
Yeah.
Yes, he could have been mature age, but I'm thinking is more 30s.
Yeah. No, I reckon he's younger than you, Matt.
No, he wouldn't have graduated uni in 2008.
Yeah.
I was still at high school. Yeah. But up a bit higher. He said he missed his graduation in 2008.
Oh, he did.
Uni graduation too. So he probably finished around 2005. So he's, I'd say about mid-30s if he's not.
Yeah. But to end this on a slightly more positive note, I will say this is, okay, the things that have made my life so much better since I got my diagnosis. Number one, I understand a lot of the weird shit that I did as a kid was because of my ADHD. I understand now that some of the things I did were completely normal. Not good. There's a difference between being normal and being good, but I understand. Like, I don't blame myself. I don't.
There's an explanation for why they happened, other than just you're doing something that was meant to be bad. It's understandable.
Yeah, exactly. After having my ADHD diagnosis, I've been able to move my life on. I've been able to get an education. I have done so much more of my life since I've had my ADHD diagnosis and treatment. I have also helped people as well. Jen, you're one that I've talked to about getting a diagnosis. I've got at least 2 or 3 other people that I've gone, I think you should get a diagnosis, and one of which has followed up, got a diagnosis, and now their life is getting better, because they were really worried, because they were saying things like, what if I am actually stupid? What if I am actually lazy? Because that's a common thing that's said about ADHD people, is that they're lazy or they're stupid. And I was like, come on, sweetie, you're not. You've just got ADHD. And then she got the diagnosis. She's on medication. She's like, I was able to do something that I never would have been able to without having medication. You have literally changed my life. So my ADHD diagnosis has ended up being one of the most important things that has ever happened to me. And those questions of, if you could go back in time and tell your 15-year-old something, what would it be? And mine would be, you have ADHD. That would be for me. It's my diagnosis has been overwhelmingly positive for me, and I'm grateful for it. Matt, what about you? What's been a positive thing for you when it comes to your ADHD?
Well, for me, it's a bit hard because I was diagnosed in kindergarten, so it's just been a thing the whole time. But one of the things that I realized way too late, and by that I actually mean a lot more recently than I'd be happy admitting, is that ADHD was more than just an attention problem.
Yeah.
It's not just, I can't focus, or you get distracted easily, but it's there's more to it. And that was one thing that was never fully explained to me.
Mm.
And I get the biggest problem I face is that inertia to start things. Because once I start, I won't stop. I will finish them.
Mm.
Or at least I'll get to a very, very noticeable checkpoint.
Yeah. Yeah. So,
that's the one that I do. But yeah, my case is a bit different. It's hard to pick like one thing to go back to, apart from maybe that. Start doing things, but I'm still figuring out the best way to get around that problem. So when I figure it out, I'll come back and tell myself. I don't know that there is
one. Yeah, tell us when you figure that one out. Oh.
If anyone else does figure it out, let me know, because I'll be happy to, even if it doesn't work for me, I'm still willing. I'd be willing to listen to you.
Yeah. I generally, what I do is I generally say, I am going to start this at this time. That's what I'm going. I will start this particular thing at this time, and I'll give myself X amount of time to do it. If you haven't heard of,
if you don't get it done, how do you stop?
Well, that's why it's sort of something that should take me half an hour. I give myself an hour and a half.
Okay, that makes sense.
Yeah. So that's what I would do. And Jen, even though you haven't gone on medication, what's something that you've...
I think it was a realization that it wasn't... like you were saying before, it's a realization that you're not lazy. There is an aspect there that you have to overcome of just the way that you are, is how you get around these things. It's not about being lazy. It's not about... And focusing on doing things from a different angle. Which I will admit this year has been really hard for me, because between being sick and other things, ADHD has been a back burner thing for me. But it was a big realization, and having that discussion with you was just so eye-opening for me. Even though I knew about ADHD, I'd never really considered it for myself until Mara and I had sat and talked about. I think we talked for about 2.5 hours or something.
Something like that,
It was something, and I can't even. It had the original conversation had absolutely nothing to do with that. It was something else, and I can't even.
Yeah, and then I was like, by the way, you have ADHD.
And then we just sat and talked about it. Okay, oh yeah, that's me. Oh shit. It's like, why have I ignored something like this? Because I knew about ADHD, but I just never pegged it for myself that this was something that I was probably struggling with, and I'd just been ignoring to a large
Yeah.
extent. And I can look back on my life and see how that's always been the case. And like that's why I said to you, think about your school when you brought up school reports, you said, yeah, your report's going to be like mine. They say you're very capable, but doesn't apply themselves.
Yeah.
Is pretty much what the comments were from all my teachers for any point. And even when I did type in uni, it was like, yeah, very, very capable, but doesn't apply themselves.
Yeah.
And it's like, yeah, what?
Yeah, you become a lot more forgiving. You forgive yourself a lot more, and then you're like, okay, yeah, what I did was an asshole thing. I recognize that, or what I did was irresponsible. I recognize that, but that is just a manifestation of my ADHD. Yes, kick yourself up the butt. Take responsibility for your actions, but you just realize that rather than you going, oh, I didn't do that because I'm a lazy bastard, you go, oh, I didn't do that because that was a manifestation of my ADHD. No, it's not an excuse, but
you can target solutions better. Instead of feeling lazy, you're like, no, I need to fix the attention deficit, and at least it's more productive. One thing, though, that seems to have slightly worked for me now that I think about it, it came to me afterwards with the time thing. That is one bit that I don't have a problem with, as much of a problem with, because I definitely know that keeping track of time is hard, because when I hyperfixate, I'll happily let hours go by, the world will just go by and I'll ignore it. But in terms of not being late for things, but I live by my watch. I have it on my hand, and in my head I plan every single thing out.
I do that with this.
Don't know that's the solution. I always love having my little analog watch.
Between the Fitbit on my wrist and my phone, that's how I keep myself in check with time. And I'll even set multiple alarms to make myself do things. And I have to set the multiple alarms because I will automatically turn that alarm off or put it on delay because I'm in the middle of something else and I want to finish that first. And even if that something else is, I'm having a snooze this morning because I didn't sleep last night until 2 a.m.
Yeah.
So I have to do multiple alarms. I have to give myself multiple chances to get up. So if I want to set an alarm like for this morning stream for you, Matt, because the stream started at 8 o'clock for me, I had to set my alarm, even though it's just walking into the other room pretty much for me. I got to get up and do my hair and everything, get ready for the stream. But I had to set an alarm an hour beforehand, not 15 minutes or half an hour, because I had to do that because I knew I'd procrastinate on getting up for at least 20 minutes. And And that's only because I knew I had to get up. If I didn't know I had to get up, it was going to take longer at that time in the morning on a Sunday.
Yeah. So one of the things, one of the not superpowers, but one of the things that I really enjoy about having ADHD is that I think. Sorry,
we only decided it a couple of hours ago to do this. I actually think it might not be a bad idea to do a few more of these, get different people and then talk about ADHD, because it's one of those things that people don't always talk about.
Yeah. But one of the things I love about my ADHD is that we think outside of the box as well. I actually find that a lot of really good science communicators might actually have some sort of neurodiversity. Because all three of us are science communicators and we can teach science and break it down because we think weird. And by thinking weird, we can explain things to people in a weird way. And then all of a sudden people are like, oh, that makes perfect sense. So like people who are neurotypical, because I've had a couple of lecturers who are neurotypical, are literally the most boring people I have ever come across with lecturing.
Talk about the thing because it's exciting, not because it's make it exciting. It has to be exciting.
Yeah, exactly. So I find that we just think weird, and in thinking weird, we make really good teachers. I've found.
I think it's because we have this innate ability to make the mundane interesting.
Yeah, because if it wasn't mundane,
because if we couldn't do that, we wouldn't be able to do the mundane.
Exactly.
because that's how much we don't want to do the mundane. So to make the mundane work for us, we have to be able to make it interesting, and that's for anything. It has to become interesting to want to do it.
Yeah. Matt, what about you? What's your favorite thing about ADHD? If you've got one.
It's when I can, and it's very hard to do it, but I'm happy when it occurs, is being able to hyperfixate on a task that I actually need to do. It could be as simple as cleaning my room. It could be as complicated as actually writing part of a thesis or soldering electronic components. And if anyone's here from the stream earlier this morning, you would have had a bit of a laugh with that. And so, yeah, it's the ability to be able to, at times, and I said I wish I had more control over when I could do it, but being able to be like, no, this task will get done, and it will get done relative to my own skills, get done really well. Get done thoroughly is probably the best way to word it. That would be mine, I think.
And Jen, what's your favorite thing about having ADHD?
Yeah, as annoying as it can be to have a brain that never shuts up and fixates on things, I actually find it really useful for nutting out problems. It is just so handy being able to do that. And I have spent the last year nutting out the problems of what it would be like being somebody in the 70s developing computer technologies at the dawn of the home computer evolution, and what the problems were they had that most people aren't even aware of, and why things were the way they were. And it's gotten to the point in my head that I want to do a video series on it, and why we couldn't have certain things in a certain way, because it is really, really, well, I find it really interesting. But I think I could present it in a way that other people would, because I've spent so much, my brain has spent so much time figuring this out. And yeah, it's one of those things. I really enjoy that about my head sometimes. I don't enjoy it at 2 a.m. in the morning when my brain suddenly thought something new, and it will not shut up, because it's something, this often happens. I had an insight into quantum mechanics and the start of the universe a couple of nights ago, and I was so tired I went to sleep. Now I cannot remember what it was, but I know I had it, and that's really annoying me. When Matt was talking about, I want to do a video about the early universe. Like, I had a really good idea about that the other night, and I wanted to talk to Matt about it. I know I wanted to talk to Matt about it, but I don't remember it now, because I actually went back to sleep. My own internal monologue went on so long I fell asleep to myself. I don't know if either of you have ever done that, but
we've already. Yeah,
I sometimes deliberately do it. One of the ways I can help calm my brain down is I force myself to come up with a story when I'm in bed, instead of letting my thoughts wander, because as soon as that happens, and it does all the time, I'm not going to stop. So what I do is I force myself, and you can come up with a narrative you want, but it's like writing a fiction novel, and I come up with a story and I force myself to play through, and you have to keep to the same story. You can do whatever the hell you want with the story, and I find eventually your brain just sleeps, and I got to sleep on it.
Yeah.
All right. Well, by the way, there's quite a lot of places where you can go and get ADHD stuff. How to ADHD, the YouTube channel is definitely the place to go. She is gorgeous. She's such a sweetheart. She's very ADHD, and she made it because she said when she got as an adult, she was like, there's all this information about people who have family members or teachers of kids who have been diagnosed with ADHD, but nothing to do with adults who've got ADHD or have been recently diagnosed. So how to ADHD, can I get Giant Butthole, can I get you to put a link in the thing at the bottom to say for where it is? Or ADD Tude, which is an online magazine that does a lot of your ADHD. Yeah, Additude. It's ADD Tude. And also there's a lot of online communities that will help out as well. So they're the places that I've gone for getting some information, especially as I was diagnosed as an adult. Native atheist. Titan Uranus is the name, but Titan meaning large and Uranus is butthole, so that's why I call him. Oh, sorry, I didn't realize you don't have a wrench. Why do you not have a wrench? There you go, mate. You should have a wrench now. Yep. All right, there you go. So yeah, that's basically it. So Jen, where can we find you?
Yeah, you can find me on Polymathic on Twitter. Or some people will probably pick it up, probably more likely under the old one, which is Jen's Little Corner. Or on my YouTube channel, which is either Jen's Little Corner or Polymathic, because you can get it from both. Yeah, probably the easiest way to keep track of me. Although I'm guessing as Elon Musk slowly erodes the ability of anyone to be able to use Twitter, we'll be looking for new places. You can find me on Mero's Discord occasionally.
Yeah. Very.
Very.
Yes,
very.
I do have a Discord as well. And Matt, who are you? What are you? Where are you? Why are you? How are you?
The usual. Well, the main place you're going to find me is on YouTube, Almost a Doctor, just as it has written down the bottom corner there. And I do mainly science videos. I don't tend to focus on topics like this because it's just not really my area of expertise. But and I think this will make a bit more sense in light of what we're saying today. I like to try and find interesting questions that you may not have asked, or just find more interesting areas to have a little go at. Most recent video was on the world's only rocket fighter that dissolved its pilots. But I've got other videos out there like why do submarines flies and can you pick up a cow with a laser? Or it's not quite called that, but you'll see that in the thumbnail. You can also find me on Twitter too. That's the other place to find me. But they tag there as Dr. Almost because someone else had Almost a Doctor.
How dare they?
Yeah, it won't let me on my YouTube handle. Won't let me have Almost a Doctor. It has to be Almost a Doctor 1 or something because apparently there is another Almost a Doctor out there. But I never remember finding a channel called that. If you type it in, you find my channel, unless someone's made one since. I don't know. But anyway, that's separate. You can find me.
Alrighty. And okay, so the How to ADHD Giant Butthole has put it in the chat. So go and check out their YouTube channel if you wanted to have a little bit more information about being an adult and having ADHD. They've got some excellent stuff. Anyway, as you guys know, I am Navadia. I very rarely upload things onto the internet nowadays because fuck life, to be honest with you. 2022 has been a shit of a year for me. So I might start streaming a little bit more often now because streaming is much easier than filming.
You might see the three of us together a bit more frequently.
Yeah, it would be good. And
yes, because we had our one this morning. For anyone who wasn't aware, we have one over on my channel. I had my two lovely guests, co-host and guest, over, and we had a go at some really, really terrible science stock photos. So if you want to laugh,
yeah,
we did.
I don't know how to end this stream because Jen accidentally started it for me.
You've got an orange button up in the top corner.
Do I?
Yeah.
It does say in. Okay, so I just want to say, everyone, stay safe, stay healthy, stay happy, and all that sort of jazz. And don't forget, don't give yourself the raw prawn. Have a good one.
Bye.
Bye.